Welcome to the Upside Down podcast, where each episode we discuss a question that's come up in our journeys with Jesus and his upside down kingdom that we want to understand God's ways in. Join us as we seek God's heart together.
Gave it its all.
That was nice.
Yeah, I had to do it to him. Well, gentlemen, welcome back
We're here, man.
to the Upside Down podcast. I think number 10, if I'm not mistaken.
The ace.
Yeah, is it German?
French.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yep. So good. Love it. Man, it's good to be back here with you guys.
Strong.
Yeah.
Strong.
Yeah,
Strong start.
beginning. Strong
It is
beginning.
It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're super good at.
Dude, your hair
Language.
is looking fabulous.
My wife
Better than it's ever been.
My wife
Yeah.
says I look like Albert Einstein, but
Albert
just
Einstein
not white
mixed
hair.
with John Mayer.
Yeah,
You mean Jan Neor?
Juan
Mayor.
Mayor. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Oh, yeah.
good. It's looking nice.
I like it, man.
Yeah.
You're like right on the brink of the theory of relativity. It's like not after, because that's when he really,
Yeah.
things got rough for him.
Yeah.
But like just before.
Yeah.
Just before.
I'm headed in that
before.
direction.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. In this episode, we're going to talk about bending space time with your prayers.
Ooh.
Interstellar.
You'll know a lot
So
about that.
we, my wife and I were driving before I came over here, and she was like, Jeremiah, I have the best icebreaker for you, and I was like, babe, come on, let me hear
Come on
it.
now.
Hit me with it.
So she said, if you were doing karaoke in a room full of people, what is the song that you would choose to do to
Ooh.
get the crowd going?
I know
What's
I know what yours is.
Do you?
Don't stop. Believe.
Okay, that's fair.
That one brings the house
that
down.
was-
dude,
I've
that's-
done. I've done.
Every
word.
time.
What
Dude, he
word?
sings high though.
He does.
Like,
Yeah, he
hold
does.
on, do that. That's the original key. Check me. That's the original key. I was
Yeah.
singing the original key.
I do think so. Yeah, I do think so. Was that Steven Tyler, right?
No.
Stephen Perry.
Stephen
Perry.
Stephen
Perry.
Perry. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
But what would you guys do?
I've done my share of karaoke, and I always try to bring the house down.
Wow.
I don't
He's
have
just
the.
that guy.
I was gonna say,
Well,
I love that
no,
you're like
well, let me-
anything. You're like, I've been
No,
there.
listen. I don't have the
Many
vocal
times.
prowess, but I have the stage prowess. I go for the performance.
Yeah,
I
you
go,
got to.
Yeah, I
Got
go
to.
all out.
That's
You're
what
a
karaoke's
you're
all
a
about.
showman.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
greatest.
I've done I'll tell you a big hit that I've had, and then I'll tell you but what I really want to do one day. I want to do so I did a big hit of Miley Cyrus, Wrecking Ball.
Wow.
Original key.
Yeah. So that was a good one.
Did you go for the same costume as well?
No. But then my dream
That's the stage presence.
Yeah, right.
my dream is to one day do a full rendition of Guns N' Roses November Rain.
Wow.
With,
I actually
with
don't
the
even,
guitar solo and everything. You
Actually,
don't
The
know
fact
that?
that both of us don't know that song, I think you might need to put that on the back burner, buddy.
Dude, it's Guns N' Roses, dude. It's
Would
one
you
of
say
the,
November Rain?
Yes.
Is that like the cousin of
Does
Purple
it
Rain?
often rain in
Oh,
November?
that's another good one. Oh, that just makes me sad.
Purple. That'd be a good one. That'd be
would be-
better
Do
than
you know
November
any
Rain.
Guns N' Roses?
Yeah.
Welcome to the
Sweet
jungle.
Child of Mine.
Sweet, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Then that's
Come on.
Yeah,
November
man.
Rain.
I
need to
got a-
stop
I got a
singing
Guns
all
N'
these
Roses
songs.
T-shirt
I don't need
from
to
Plato's
sing all
Closet
these.
in high school, so I had to learn at least a few of them.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
it was like a tour shirt. It was probably like it was probably one of those shirts.
A cross and skulls.
Yeah, and it had like it had the year on it, and then like all the cities they went to. But it was probably like one of those Urban Outfitters shirts
Yeah,
that like
right.
they remake, you know,
Yeah.
and they're like 1985.
Yeah,
Fun
so
fact:
vintage.
they did
So
a
vintage.
they did a concert where like some people died at the concert. They were moshing or like going nuts. So after that they were labeled the most dangerous band in the world.
That's
Good.
yeah, it's kind of an epic name, especially for a rock band.
I know, seriously, for a heavy.
Especially when your lead singer's name is Axel.
Yeah.
Dude, they called me.
I
that
know
in
a
high
lot about
school.
Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
What's
Wow.
yours?
Wow.
Is it?
Wow,
Journey?
Don't Stop Believing. No, it's actually not Don't Stop Believing. That'd be a great song. I was trying to think about if you're doing karaoke, I think your approach is the right way to do it. Like you got to be going
Unless
for the
you can
stage
really
presence.
sing.
But even if
which
you
I
can,
can't.
even if you can really sing, I think you want to try to get the people into it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
there was a time where I was like, it depends on the vibe. One of my favorite songs for like all time is More Than My Hometown by Morgan Wallen. I love that song, but it's not like a
Interesting.
karaoke
No,
kind of
it's
vibe.
not,
You know
no.
what I mean?
Yeah.
You're not pulling people in for something like that.
Yeah.
I will say, I've been in spots where people have chosen wagon wheel, and it has been simply electric.
Oh, dude.
I mean, you get everybody there. They all know it. And like
No
at
matter
that point,
where you're at, too. You could be in the city as well.
Yes,
They're
yes.
just throwing down.
Yeah, you can, no matter where. Like I was
Shout out to Darius.
I was out with some friends recently, and there was shout out to Hootie. And we were hanging out, and there was a live band, and they were playing folky songs nobody knew, and then all of a sudden they start playing Wagon Wheel, and the entire place is just lit up. We're so pumped. So anyway, I think that's great because it doesn't even matter if you're like a good singer or not because everybody else is singing too.
Yep.
So I think Wagon Wheel would be a strong option. Plus, it takes me back to
Wagon Wheel.
Yeah, that Darius Rucker covered it.
Yes, it is a cover. Yeah, it is a cover.
Yo, you ruined my entire day.
Yeah.
What are you talking?
yeah.
Who did it originally?
It was in the 90s. What were they called?
That was probably one of those AI
tell you.
reels you were watching. No, that's not a cover.
Shane is our young what's the
You don't know. It's fine. It's fine. We
Yeah,
can
I'm
leave
not
it.
sure.
We can
I'm
leave
not
it
sure
at
who
that.
covered it, but it takes me back
I'll
to
look it up.
Takes me back to my young life days in high school when like we would go to club at in people's basements, and there's like 100 people in like a 20 by 10 room, and it's just like crammed, just bodies in there. Everybody's sweating.
Yeah.
You know, somebody's gonna talk about Jesus in like 10 minutes, but you're just singing Wagon Wheel. Like all your high school
That
friends.
was the move back in the day.
That was the move, and then we'd all go to Sheets and get like fried at platters. You know, at like 11:30 p.m. That's what it takes me to.
That's good.
It's a good choice.
It is a great choice.
Ceddie? Cedric?
Probably, cha-cha slide or something. No, I'm just kidding. No, nothing like that. Honestly, I'm going to go more...
Imagine you do a line dance song. Slide
to the left. Take it back now,
yeah.
It's just, okay. But I would say I'm going to go a little more modern, and I'll say... I had some help.
Nice.
It ain't like I can, because I kind of know that by heart.
Very singable. Yeah.
And everybody would be in it.
Yeah.
Give it a year though,
it.
I wouldn't be able to do it anymore.
Yeah.
But then give it 10 more years, I'd be able to do it again.
Yeah,
You
that's
know
true.
what I mean?
That's true.
But also, don't judge me for this. I was on a big espresso kick.
Nice.
Oh,
clean
do you
version.
mean
Sabrina.
Sabrina.
Dude, baby can't sleep.
Think
Baby, I
about
know.
me every night.
That's that me
Oh.
espresso.
Yeah.
Dude, my wife and I
It's
quote
very
that song.
jovial.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
Is it? I think it's that one where she's like, I'm working late because I'm a singer. I think that's the funniest line in any music ever. Like my brother will unironically say that like to try to catch people off guard. Like my dad sometimes. He always works late, dude. So we're on a family FaceTime call, and my dad's like, sorry, like, guys, I was working late again. And my brother, like, under his breath, he's like, must be a singer.
Yeah. So those two. Yeah, because I mean, I want
Something
to
medicine show.
bring.
That's the
What?
That's who originated Wagon Wheel. Something. What is it?
Medicine show?
Something.
I'll believe it when I
medicine
see it.
show. That's the name of the band.
That's good. Well, good question.
Old school
nice.
medicine show.
No.
That's what Shane just said. We trust him.
Do you trust Shane?
I believe
the
in him.
producer.
Old Crow?
Yeah, that's why I get him confused with Counting Crows. Yeah, Old Crow medicine show. Yeah.
Wow.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
With Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan. You mean Timothy Chalamet?
Wow. Timothy.
Amazing.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Sponsor of the show,
let's,
Timothy Chalamet.
Oh, I wish. Yeah.
Let's get this wagon wheel on the road.
Oh.
Juan, would you care to rock me?
So
Hey.
Juani rock me.
if possible, I would like to go last because I'm in between two questions, and so it depends on what you guys ask.
All right.
Which direction
Awesome.
I'll go.
Well, I started off last time, so
you
Ceddie,
sure did.
would you care to rock me?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Ceddie the Teddy.
That's a deep
That's what
cut.
everyone calls you, right?
Apparently.
Ceddie the
Ceddie the Teddy. Anyway.
Who wets the Betty?
Oh, no. This guy. You don't know when to stop, do you? So, this is I thought about this today, through some conversations today. Do you think that Christian scandals are of net benefit or detriment to like Christians. So no, in the way that like we know about it, not that
it's exposed.
That's exposed, and everybody in like the Christian community knows about it. So a little more context on that. So a guy recently who was a part of a band, so let's say rhymes with Booze Boys, was in some hot water lately. And
Booze Boys is hilarious. That is so good.
It's public. I don't think you're protecting anyone's
it's a joke.
anonymity.
Anonymity. But that's very public. You know what I mean? Everybody knows about it. Everybody's talking about it. It's the Christian gossip that happens with pastors failing, that happens with, say like Carl Lentz, the guy from Gateway, Robert Morris, and people like that.
Ravi Zacharias.
Yeah, Ravi, and all that stuff. So is it a net positive or a net negative, in your opinion, that we as the global church learn about these things? Like, is it better that we know that these things are wrong, or is it better that we just don't know and make these like personal matters, among those people?
I think it's actually a very interesting question, because even as you are, my mind is just firing off on all the different angles by which to look at it. My initial gut reaction is to think that it can never be a net positive for like a well-known Christian to just fall. And for their faith to crumble in such a public setting, and kind of make, their faith and overall faith kind of seem, like a sham. But, on the other hand, again, it is good, for that stuff to be exposed, particularly if there's victims, right? In certain cases of abuse. And so that's definitely a positive. But also, I think there are losses, but it could ultimately be a gain for people to see that we are all still flawed, and so this is why we need Jesus, and to kind of maybe tear down at, what ends up becoming a form of idolatry, when we put people on a pedestal as like, the ideal of preaching or of Christian music or of whatever it may be. But then again, I don't know. I tend to be kind of hopeful and believe that people can achieve a level of sort of, whether it's success or just, personal growth or development, where you can handle, kind of like being well known, being famous, or being like at the top of your game if you're like a pastor or, just a evangelist or preaching or whatever, and not give in to temptation. But maybe I don't know, I question that all the time. Like, is there a point where like you get too big? Is that even the point of what we do at all? So, I think it's a really, really good question. And I think ultimately, because it hurts my heart a little bit, just because throughout these people's journey, we often benefit from them. We're often blessed by like their ministry or things they say. It's just this darkness, this hidden life that they've, been concealing, that I think it creates a lot of questions, which can be helpful, but also can be damaging. So I don't know. I think we need to just unpack it some more, because the more I think about it and the more I speak on it, I think I'm becoming even more unsure.
Yeah. Right.
Ultimately. Yeah.
I think it's a good thing, to be honest with you. Yeah. Not that this stuff happens, but I think it's a good thing because I think about a guy like Mike Winger, if you know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. He's a dude on YouTube who he makes videos. certainly not tearing people down, but he invites people and gives them the opportunity to respond to him. But he spends significant time, like biblically, observing the ministries of people who are really controversial. So everyone from like Todd White to Bill Johnson to Benny Hinn to like Mike Todd to all these guys were like that list, even that short list of names, you're like, oh, hey, whoa. He spent significant time like really, really digging in, and also reaching out to people who know them, reaching out to them directly and inviting them to have a conversation to help explain and bring clarity to different situations. And so it's kind of like a discernment ministry is what he does. I think he might classify it that way. I know other people have. But he essentially is trying to help point people towards the truth. And I think it's a good thing that we have the opportunity to see that no one is Jesus besides Jesus. It's just him, and it's really easy to lift people up because they find great success. But the Lord gives and the Lord takes away, and he's the one who deserves to be on the throne, and he's the only celebrity that will last, whether like it's a pastor or a band or any of those things. And I think it gives us the opportunity to learn. So I like that there's more accountability than ever before. Like, I know technology is incredibly polarizing because it's so powerful. So it's capable of great good and great evil. But part of that is that, dude, there's just so much accountability. Like, there's receipts for everything all the time.
Which boggles my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, it is hard to escape, but it also seems like people are dumb. When
yes, where you're like, did you not?
Yeah.
Like, did you genuinely not think?
Yes, exactly.
At all.
Yeah.
Did you not think like, oh, if I use my church work computer and keep my cell phone separate, then these things like, what? But those are the things, those are the concessions you make or the rationalizations that you make to defend a life of secret sin whenever you are deceived by the enemy. That's just what it is,
Yeah.
And so I think it's good that we see these things. Of course, the scandals themselves are terrible. Like, there's always people who are hurt and awful stuff that comes out of it in that way. And then there's like, sometimes it's easy to dissociate, this person who's with this famous Christian band from the reality of the individual. And like something that the chaplain of the Steelers, Kent Chevalier, talks about is that sometimes it's easy to dissociate that like, players are people, and people, we like have conversations about who needs to be fired and this and that and who needs to be let go, but it's like these are like husbands and dads and folks who they
almost
have,
like objectifying.
Yeah, it's completely objectifying them in ways that like we think that we know what's best, but like there's families at stake, and there's like the friendships of their kids and the relationships and communities involved, and like these kinds of sins and fallouts have impacts on like the greater community. It doesn't just impact one person. It's like probably their spouse and their parents and their kids and like generations of folks who anytime that name is brought up, it's like, oh, dude, wasn't it your dad? Wasn't it your uncle, your grandpa? And that's really devastating. So there's like damage that comes out of it in that way, but it also gives an opportunity for the rest of us to be like reminded that Jesus is the one who should be given the glory all the time. We can't be deceived into thinking it's just us, or that we're so holy that we couldn't take a few wrong turns and wind up really broken again.
Don't you find that approach to be so worldly? I mean, in my opinion, the way that I see the world operating, like, you just go on YouTube for 2 seconds and you see some wannabe influencer trying to expose a larger influencer, right?
Yeah.
And so that's like a big thing where it's like, I'm using any scandal I can grab like a hold of to move people into my camp and be like, they're not authentic, but I am, because I'm exposing them. It's like the movie critic, right?
Yeah.
Or something like that. And it seems to just be a very worldly approach. And I'm not coming into this with any answer one way or the other. I'm just thinking about this right now. And so imagine like a scenario where you only took in what people provided you. Like, there was no internet, there was no nothing. Say like you just had a TV of like preachers, you had books of people like we were like 50 years ago or something like that. But there was nobody like exposing these people. But if something happened internally, that person was just gone. but that whole ministry didn't collapse because it
Are
wasn't.
you describing the Catholic Church?
Well, I don't know. I wasn't thinking about the Catholic Church, but
Sounds like.
you know what I mean? I'm like, think about if you didn't have that information. Say you didn't know Carl Lentz had an affair, but he's now just gone, and they just replace him.
That's what they did with all those priests in the Catholic Church.
Oh, really?
That's what they do. Yeah, that's what they've done.
So you're saying
Historic.
you're saying it's a bad thing?
No, I'm saying no. I agree with what you're saying, but like what you're describing is what
Oh, I
the
didn't know.
Catholic
Yeah,
Church
yeah.
has done with priests who
I'm
have
not-
molested boys.
Yeah.
And so the public doesn't know about it. They know about it internally. So again,
And then
I'm
it
not
just
going
kind of grows.
Yeah, I'm not
and
going to
then it
say
becomes
that.
a huge scandal.
Yeah, this was a big thing. Yeah, and so they just move them to another state or whatever, where they
No,
continue.
they'd be fired. No, I'm saying, yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, no,
So, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
agreeing
right.
with
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
like
yeah.
that's what it's like when it's just in the dark.
Yeah,
To-
but I think there's a healthy balance there because I think what you're getting at is sometimes Christians use scandals like this as an excuse to gossip about people and
Right.
tear them down,
Yeah.
and that's terrible. Like you see something like that, and what it shouldn't do is be like, you shouldn't like just run around talking about how awful this person is and X, Y, and Z. You should pray for them. You should pray for them, you know, and you should have compassion on the fact that they are broken and that they're desperately in need of God's help, and that just like we were talking about, more than just them is at stake with everything that happened. And so you hear stuff like that with Carl Lentz, and he has very openly talked about what happened. Praise the Lord that him and his wife are still together, but like it impacts people so deeply, and it's so easy to just go online and tear this guy down when we could like have compassion and pray for them, but also hold them accountable and be honest. Like I think is a healthy.
But is it
balance
our
of both.
job to hold them accountable?
Not us. No. But I mean, like those involved need to hold them accountable.
But now it's a global scandal. Now it's a smear on the church at large.
yeah. That's what I'm trying to get at is like have compassion on the person and don't run around gossiping about it. But also the people who are involved and can actually do something should hold the person accountable.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't just run around like always just blabbering.
And that's what I'm
about
trying to
these,
get at. Like, say, let's just trust that churches are there, like the people in leadership are good Christians, and when they find out about a scandal, they approach them and be like, "Hey, you're living in sin. You're going to have to step down from your position," and then they just step down and they don't come back to that church, and then they can just say, "Hey, look, there's something that happened," and then we now have a new pastor. Instead of just, I don't know, it just
putting it on blast.
Yeah. So I don't know. It seems to me that it happens so often that, and which is a terrible thing in and of itself.
Yeah.
Maybe some things are a little extra emphasized. Like to me, I have a little more sympathy for like Bethel, for like people that didn't actually commit any sins, like in terms of like affairs or embezzling or something like that, but then people are just putting them on blast and just like tearing them down. That's just me.
I think I don't know. For me, a high calling comes with high responsibility and therefore should have high accountability. So
That's good.
I think that someone who has a big platform, or even make it relative, to a particular church or whatever. But if you've got a leadership role and you fall, I think it's like kind of letting. I think you can be. I think it's important for me, in my opinion, to just be honest and upfront about what happened instead of. And perhaps even use it as a teaching opportunity for the congregation, right?
Yeah.
As you lead them into like, this is what happened. These are the facts, perhaps some sensitivity if there's family involved or children or something like that. But not just saying like, this person had to step down and they're not here anymore.
Yeah.
But being like, hey, here's what happened. Let's pray. And I've kind of seen this done at certain times, and it's like, let's pray for this person. Let's, so yeah, I do believe that that's something that someone going into a leadership position with a significant platform should be aware of, right? That it's like,
No, that's a good point.
just like you know, are receiving attention when you're doing things well, like, when you fail, like, everyone's gonna know about it. It's gonna be exposed. It's gonna be out there.
Yeah.
And I think that's a form of like checks and balances. So even that I'm agreeing, like, that it's good that these things do come out. One of my questions is, like, as I think about all these things, right, that happen often, constantly, where we've become so accustomed to them, is like, do you think that people rise and achieve, platform, attention, all this, and then become corrupt? Or, like, are they corrupt and that's how they got to the top? I don't know that we can answer that, but, like, that's one of the things that I think about, because then it just leads me to, like, again, I've thought this for a long time. Like, I don't think it's 100% like in every single case, but I feel like in most cases it appears to me that fame and faith, like, are incongruent, except for Jesus, the fame of Jesus.
Yeah.
And some people have handled themselves well, but usually they remove themselves from the spotlight.
Yeah.
Right? And, like, they get attention for the things that they do, but they're not, like, always out there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like,
I
I think that some people getting more attention that are pure in heart is a good thing. I mean, like C.S. Lewis.
Yeah.
There's some modern people too. Francis Chan, he does well to try to do something.
Yeah, but I love that you use Francis Chan as an example, because I was talking to Gianna, my lovely wife, about this in the car. Like, Francis Chan, by every metric that the evangelical church has, was a roaring success. He had one of the biggest, fastest growing mega churches, and he left it because he was like, this is not how God has called us to do church, and I cannot be a part of it anymore. And so he left so that he could go and pursue God's call in his life. And what he left behind was what most pastors dream of, is like massive attendance, massive churches, massive cash flow. And he was like, yeah, no, this isn't it. Like, this isn't the life that Jesus designed me for, and that I will not thrive as a follower of Jesus in this role. And so he leaves, and he's a missionary in China for years and years. He moves his whole family, and now he, like, still does missions work, but he goes back and forth. And I think that is so telling, because he will come. Like, sometimes you'll hear a sermon and it'll knock your socks off because he's killer.
It'll blow up.
Yeah, he's incredible. But then he'll go back into serving the Lord. And I would submit that the authority that comes from the teaching that he has comes from the life of obscurity that he lives every single day, because he is faithful to pursue Jesus above everything. And when people give him a platform, he shares with authority because he's with the Lord. And then he goes back, but he's not living for that platform anymore. And I think, just like pain, money and success is an amplifier of what's already in you.
What I was gonna say,
it's an amplifier of what's already in you. It doesn't change who you are, it reveals who you are. And so, like, when you stub your toe, what do you say? Hopefully something,
heck.
hopefully, right? Those autonomic
Ouchie.
responses, like, it reveals what's in your heart most deeply. It's a glimpse into, like, below all of the things I consciously choose to say, there is a person that I am, that I can't touch, and it takes time for the Lord to change that part of me. And so success, I think, reveals what's really in you. And a guy who's like an awesome father figure in Northway talked very recently about how God in every stage of your life is focused on developing your character. And in those moments, if success comes before your character is prepared for it, then, like, you should seriously consider stepping away from whatever the thing is. And also he talked about inviting in as much possible accountability as you possibly can, and giving people full access to your heart and life so that they can speak into it. Because It's the same thing with like, this is what makes fasting so beneficial, is when you take away the things that allow you to stay like as you normally are and maintain your body. It brings to the surface the things you're actually dependent on and makes you realize like, oh, I get way angrier than I actually should when I'm not getting what I want. You know, I'm too short with my wife. I get too frustrated with people at work, whatever the thing is. It's like, it acts as like an amplifier. It just shows you what's already underneath. And so praise God that he does work in those deep places and can grow and change us. But I do think that that's kind of how it works.
I don't know. I mean, it's so, to me, it's a very it's layered, man, because then like I'm just following a trail in my mind, right? Because I don't think, Ceddie, you weren't a part of this conversation, but I think Jeremiah and I were talking about it.
Thanks.
How like there are some gifts, right? Like worship. Your gift is not fully manifested without an audience to a degree, unless you're just playing to Jesus in your bedroom. And that's fine. You might be like, I have a gift for talent for worship, but whatever, I don't want to use, I don't know how that works. But there are like talents like that in order for them to be fulfilled, there needs to be an audience there that receives it. Does that make sense?
Yes, no, yeah, absolutely. I'm tracking.
And then if you cultivate your gift, right, you want to get better at it, you want to improve, that's only going to draw attention and people towards you. So if you keep following that, like for me, it brings into question, again, just something that I always think about and always question is like, we brought it up. It's like, where does ambition fit in with faith? You know, like, is there a place, is there a role for it? Or is it something that we're just supposed to surrender and just allow the Lord, you know, to open doors and close doors and just lead us wherever we want? But there are voices in and out of the church, right, that are always telling us, like, you know, that God's not going to do for you. Sometimes you have to do for yourself and you have to pursue these things. And so I just feel like you just end up in this gray area, right? If you're a person who thinks deeply about these things, some people don't, you know, and they just go off and do, and that works for them. But if you're a person who like stops and like thinks to consider these things in a deep way, it's like, I don't know what to make of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just makes me kind of like, all right, well, since I don't know, I'm just gonna sit here.
Yeah. Well, I think we're coming to some sort of conclusion. Like, it's not bad that some people are elevated above others in terms of Christianity, but I do like what you said. It's like with a higher platform, it requires higher accountability, and that will come. But then also put that aside. If you're one of these people that needs to get down to the details of like any scandal whatsoever, like take Stephen Lawson, right? Big reform preacher. He had an affair and he's stepping down. Boom. Leave it at that. If there's no more victims or whatever, but people are like, "Oh, I heard she was young. You know, I heard that she was like this or that." And it's like, who cares? Like, he had an affair. That's it. He's done. He's disqualified. He is now no longer preaching. Right? Leave it at
into
that.
the realm of gossip, hearsay, negativity,
or just like trying to find new scandals in order to hold your own platform up. You know, So
well, and like a lot of the negative things,
which is like, I'm sorry, but that's so wicked. I cannot stand like,
and it happens a lot.
It does, and there's so much content out there right now that's Christian people putting this stuff out there, and they're like, "Can you believe this pastor said?"
Yeah.
Latest news about, and I'm like, dude,
I just want to keep you guys informed.
Yeah, and like we talked about this a little bit. Like, dude, I can't stand the Christian TMZ. Yeah. Like, come on, we're better than that. That's not. And then you throw up like you can't just throw Bible verses in there and make it like this is Christian now. This is God's heart. Like, no, it's not. That's not. That is not His heart. And I'm not saying to never like speak the truth in love. But if you are not reaching out to the people, you're not speaking the truth in love. You're gossiping.
Yeah.
Jesus tells you to go to the person. And that's why, like Mike Winger, like we were talking about earlier, he reaches out to them. He gives them the opportunity first. He will reach out to people around them to try to get in contact with them. And he doesn't move forward until they deny all those things. And he's like, okay, if you don't want to be a part of this, I'm going to bring information to people who are getting wounded by your ministry.
Yeah.
And that's what he does.
Yeah.
But like, if you're just like yapping about how terrible whoever it is, you know what I mean? So frustrating. I'm sorry. That just like makes me frustrated.
It's good. But like a lot of the negative things that we have described, patterns, things that we fall into, like are things of the world, right? And it's when the church starts to shift and resemble the world that these things seep in. You know, Scripture says like you can't be friends with God and be friends with the world, right? So if you, and so that's why it makes me believe that to combat these things, it's like at what point do we have to come to terms with the reality that we have to cut off the world from our lives? We have to not watch the Christian TMZ people and not, read the articles or whatever. Like,
but what about the latest Justin Bieber scandal?
Right.
Big church news.
Yeah, huge church news.
It's like you can't do both, and so I believe you can't have this, faith that is drawing you in a very pure sense, like very much closer to God and growing in Him and in the fruit of the Spirit, and still be on top of all the latest news and knowing what's up with this preacher and this worship team or whatever.
Just as a caveat, we are just as guilty of this.
Yeah,
as
I mean, we're
else.
speaking to ourselves.
Yeah, and so like it's a question that impacts a lot of us in this Christian walk, and I think it's a good thing to question. Say if you're in this and you just love hearing the latest Christian gossip, like press into that, question it, because like we're in the same boat. I mean, ear ticklers, man. Yeah. It's It's kind of satisfying sometimes to hear about some ministries like going down and all that stuff. So,
dude, I knew it.
Yeah.
But the people I never hear talking about this stuff are the people that are out there doing stuff, right? Because these are, I mean, when we fall into these traps, it's usually just time wasters, right? Things we're doing to unwind, to, entertain, to what it's like the people that I know that are busy, being productive, even resting, but just like being with the Lord, like, but they don't have time to, so like we have to, like you said, all of us check our heart and ask ourselves if we're being good stewards, right, of the gift of today that God has given us.
I agree. Yes,
that's good.
I agree.
Right.
Well, that's actually the perfect segue, because what I wanted to ask is, what role should entertainment play in the life of a Christian? And I think this is like nail on the head where we're headed with this, because a lot of the stuff that we get sucked into is, I just think, meaningless triviality and stuff that I don't need to have an opinion about. I don't even need to know about. And in generations gone by, I never would have, And so it doesn't, now there's equal opportunity for pain and hurt there, just like we talked about with the Catholic Church, like where there's a lack of accountability and a lack of transparency, you create real opportunities for hardship. But whether it's like TV or social media or YouTube or whatever it is, like how much of our time should we spend on entertainment? And are we, as followers of Jesus, entitled to spend our nights just, watching every season of Love is Blind,
Blacklist,
and just like
good.
And scrolling, and then like before bed to go to sleep, like we got to make sure we're up to date on sports and what our friends are doing on Instagram and Facebook and all this stuff. Like, where are your hearts on this? What has God done in you in this? Where do you think entertainment should fit rightly in the life of a follower of Jesus?
With how much entertainment we should consume every day, I'd say about an hour. I'm just kidding.
Dude, I hear that, man.
Yeah. No, I mean, obviously, so there is There's a couple ways. Again, this is a little nuance. There's a couple ways you can look at this. One, we have freedom. Obviously, not everything is beneficial, but we can enjoy stuff as Christians. We can enjoy entertainment. We can enjoy poetry. We can enjoy books. We can also enjoy alcohol. We can enjoy all of these things. But if they become a problem in our lives, then we have to reevaluate them. Now, is there any validity to if you spend more time on this than you do spending time with Jesus, then you have a problem? I'm not sure that's the right approach either. But then you also have to think about, I mean, I'm able to relate to so many people because of entertainment that I have consumed and are currently consuming. But I actually hate the excuse of like, oh, I'm reaching more people, and so I'm dipping my toe into things that probably God doesn't like.
Yes.
You know, I don't like that at all. So that's why this is so nuanced, where you are in, not of the world.
Yes.
You're allowed to enjoy these things. But in terms of what are we entitled to? I think we're entitled to whatever God like convicts us with.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Which is it's a hard answer to come to, and it seems like a cop-out answer. Because it's like, oh, I said it, and now we can be done with the conversation. But that's really the biggest thing for me.
Yeah. No, dude, I think that's valuable. I just think that we spend too much time with like meaningless entertainment, to be honest. And as I've like shifted away from like mindless entertainment and then creative entertainment, like I'll separate those two things into different categories, because like you spend time on your guitar writing a song, and that is a satisfying to your soul kind of thing, because like the Lord has given you those gifts. It's worshipful for you to do that, and you're growing and creating, and God made you to create and make beauty out of the creation that He has like brought us into the world to rule and reign with. So like for me, like reading is one of those things where it's not me sitting with my brain turned off just soaking something in. Like it's quite the opposite, where it's leading you to new ideas. It's helping you think the thoughts of someone else after them, and growing you and allowing you to meet, like to bring those things to the Lord and ask Him about it. And you are growing and doing something. It doesn't take nothing, you know? And when you're done, you're tired and you just go to sleep. But I think there's something to be said that the kind of entertainment that does nothing for you is the same kind of entertainment that will not allow you to actually rest properly. Like if you're on your phone before bed, just laying there, you will not sleep as well. There's so much science about that. And there's a quote, I forget who the guy is, but he talks about how in the modern age we're too dead, we're too alive to die, but we're too dead to really live. And like we're just cruising at this like low hum, unsatisfied, too busy, super entertained, never really fully enjoying anything, because we're so, like the other quote is, distracted by distraction, or distracted from distraction by distraction, which is like you're doing something and you get distracted, and you're distracted from that distraction by another distraction. And that's just like the state of our brain all the time. And so as I've leaned away from that, and like the Lord has brought conviction to me pretty recently. And like Jan and I really don't watch a lot of TV at all. We watch at home sometimes. We'll spend nights, if we have them at home alone, like we'll spend time reading, or we'll like play board games together. We'll go on walks. We like to work out, and like we do stuff like that. We'll have friends over, but like we don't spend a lot of time just like sitting watching stuff. And it's like, not to say that that's terrible and that people should never do that. That's just not our natural bent. But as I've tried to push away from, in the time where I have by myself, I tend to get more drawn into like spending significant time watching like YouTube about, you know, what NBA trades are going to happen, or like I got sucked into the NBA podcast grind, and I'd be listening to like
Shams,
bro, and like there's like the Bill Simmons podcast. There's like the Zach Lowe show, and these guys are talking about like what's gonna happen in the off season because
isn't that hilarious? The like, what ifs, like
literally,
in the
and it's
NBA,
like right now
cares?
because this game, like they lost this game, and what does that mean for this guy's storyline? And because of that thing, like here's his salary, and in the off season they can't make this work, and all that. And so as the Lord was like, hey, Jeremiah, like I just need you to reel that in. Like spend that time with me. And I was like, oh, you're right. And as I'm like, I just haven't gone back into it. I've been significantly less drawn in because I've experienced like the goodness more so of the other stuff that the Lord was already giving me the desire to do, but he just increased, like fan the flames of the healthier, more beneficial things. And so I've experienced that goodness. And I think just generally like, I just think as an American culture, we're addicted to entertainment and we think we're like entitled to just like living a life of,
it's the world, bro. It's not just America.
No. And that's, yeah. And it's
global.
It is global, but it just makes me sad. And so, Juan, what are your thoughts, buddy?
Do you guys know the Plato's allegory of the cave?
You've talked about this in the past.
Have I?
I think so. Well,
not on the podcast. Not on the
a conversation we had.
So this is
off the line.
This is Plato, right? So hundreds of years ago, Plato. The allegory of the cave is that there are these individuals, right? A lot of people in a cave, and that's their existence. That's all they know. And there's a light behind them, a fire behind them. That and there's a wall in front of them, and so outside of the cave there's people too, but they don't know it. But as those people move and walk on the other side of the fire, it casts a shadow onto the wall. So the people inside the cave are watching the shadows on the wall, thinking that it's them living their lives, but it's really the people outside of the cave. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And that was hundreds of years ago. Amazing, man. And that's not even a Christian. I mean, a Christian thinker. But yeah. And listen, I like the what you said earlier. The sort of what do you call that? Not a warning, but a just the message of like we're the first ones to point the finger at ourselves. I love entertainment. I always have since I was a little kid. I've been obsessed.
Caveat is the word you're looking for.
No, like the like not a warning, but like a caveat works.
Cautionary tale.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was thinking, but I was like,
no. But anyway, and like to the point where like ever since I was a kid, I've had a television in my bedroom until I got married. And we just talked about it, and we're like, yeah, let's not have one. So now we only have the TV in the basement. There's no other TV in the house. And so that's helped a ton. But, I mean, you name it. Like, I've loved it and consumed it. Movies, TV shows, books, music. And both from the creative aspect and both from the mind-numbing aspect. But for me, laying myself aside and just thinking, unbiasedly about the issue, I think we are better off eliminating it from our lives for our faith, but also merely just for a more productive and more rich life.
Yes.
We've talked about the founding fathers, right? Alexander Hamilton. Bro, some of these guys were still in their teens, early 20s, incredibly well read.
Yeah.
I mean, the things that Alexander Hamilton, not only did he create like our economic system, he was also a lawyer. He was also a writer.
Yeah.
Like incredible. And one after another like that. Why? Because they didn't even have electricity. These guys were candlelight.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. But they were just, first of all, living their lives and then just consuming knowledge, right? That informed then, to the point where they established the greatest nation that the world has ever seen.
Yes.
You know? And so And I do think we kind of let ourselves off the hook a little bit and make the excuse of like, well, it's impossible to escape. These are the times we live in. And like, I get all that, but my opinion is that it's still to our benefit if you can get to the point and make that choice and just say, I'm just gonna cut it off and do other stuff and read and exercise and go serve the homeless, or go serve at a shelter or go do that, spend time, anything else that you can do. And that I think it makes for a richer life. I think that part of the problem, which we discussed in our pornography episode, is that all our lives we've created these neural pathways now.
Yeah.
Where we know that there's a reward that's coming rather rapidly when I watch The Office, or when I do this. And so, that's where I'm at. I mean, I'm not trying to tell anyone else how to live their lives, or the choices that they need to make. But for me, for a lot of those reasons that I stated, like it's pretty black and white. And maybe for me personally, I kind of am juggling it now. Like I'm really into the Stanley Cup final because the Panthers are in it.
Sinner.
So like I watch that, but I know that if I'm not disciplined with that, it can be so easy to go from that to drifting into, oh, what's on after this?
Yeah.
Oh, let me stay up till 1 a.m, watching this, being really tired the next day. Or honestly, right now, it's not so much TV for me, but just like my phone, and really like doom scrolling, and just YouTube, because there's so much stuff on there. But I even though I do that, like I still have the awareness of knowing that while it requires more work and effort to cultivate a life without it, it's ultimately more fruitful and more enriching a life, I think. And it's, in the big picture, it's a real problem because we are people who are thinking about this, right? Who are conscious about it, but there's a whole generation coming up after us that
already bad enough for us.
Yeah, that don't know the difference, right? That's where like this immersion with technology is just the only world that they know. And so when you put it in those terms, I feel like it makes it maybe even more important for us to live a life that's radically different.
Yes.
And that's modeling that for young people, that it's like you don't need that. Think about what you're doing, think about, what you're consuming and what you're spending your time on, and what else the world and life and God has to offer, outside of that. Because, again, giving your life over to that, which is an extreme, but I think it is what a lot of people end up doing, myself in the past, giving your life over to that will trap you in the cave.
Yeah. Yeah, and like C.S. Lewis has a similar allegory where he talks about a boy playing in the mud, and you offer him a holiday at the sea, and like he doesn't know what that is. He's never experienced anything like that. So he's like, no, dude, I'm having fun in the mud. Can't you tell? But he's like, all expenses paid. You can go. And he's like, this is what I want to do. Yeah. He's like, that's what we're like when we settle for less than what Christ wants for us, because there's more to him and the things he has to offer than we could ever imagine. We don't even have categories to understand the goodness that he can bring in our lives, but we are so satisfied playing with the mud that we can see that we don't ever get to enjoy the goodness of the life that he desires for us, but it requires us going into doing things differently than we ever have before. And like, I have found that when I have chosen to lay down my preferences with pushing through and like not spending as much time with just like trivial entertainment, your brain starts to function differently, and like you are better at focusing for longer periods. Your attention span increases, your memory gets better, you're capable of thinking more deeply consistently. And as you tone down the noise, like this is another thing, I've stopped listening to stuff in the car as much, not permanently, but
no, that's great.
Like music, podcasts, all of it, just like cutting it out.
Rod dog in
and
those
being,
car rides.
come on, bro, who's gonna carry the boats? You know what I mean? So I'm spending time with the Lord, and I'm like, I think that the people
That's what the kids
we
call
talk
it.
about
It's terrible.
with folks who really make a difference, like you spend time with the Lord and think deeply about stuff, you know, and like out of that deep place comes, you know, the beautiful things he wants to bring into the world. Like very few really impactful things come out of just like a noise-filled hurry hustle lifestyle where you're just like always overstimulated, always over busy, and you just like, you know, you happen to have a huge impact. Like that doesn't happen, you know? And when it does, it's like these like social media influencers, you know, and it's a flash in the pan and it's done.
Yeah.
You know, like deep lasting
Sometimes.
change.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes those folks stick around and they make, you know, extra podcasts, and then they go into the WWE, and then they have a reality TV show.
Or big music artists that are very up to the times.
Yeah.
you
Right.
know?
That's true. But like people who make significant change for the better, for the kingdom of God, I think it comes out of a place of deep intimacy.
Forrest Frank right now?
A deep intimacy. No, dude, Forrest Frank, dude. But here, Forrest Frank would say that his success came out of like him, like the Lord growing his character in a season.
No,
where,
I understand that, but
Yeah,
he's so well versed in the culture.
That's true. Yeah,
But
he is. But I think Forrest Frank's.
I'm not gonna keep going down that road.
No, that's all right.
but-
I think Forrest Frank's in a dangerous position though. And I'm not saying he doesn't have the character to like do awesome stuff. Like every time I've heard him speak, you can tell that he genuinely loves Jesus, and he's like,
I think you could make the argument with him that he's kind of like making a way in culture,
yes,
crafting a culture.
But he's still met people where they're at.
But he is part of it. You know, it's not like me or you connecting with younger. Like he is young.
But
it is his culture.
He still, if he had no entertainment at all, he would not be the way he is.
Oh, okay.
That's okay. That's true. But I'm not saying like never, ever, ever under any circumstance. But I'm saying your primary mode of existence should not be consistent dependence on that thing. Yeah. And part of his career and what God is like currently leading him to do is to have an impact in that cultural atmosphere for the kingdom of God. And so like he's aware of what's happening for the sake of speaking into that place in the name of Jesus. And I think it's a beneficial thing. But I think it's just important for us to be really, really careful, you know, because like there's great stuff that happens when we lay those things down. And I'm not saying that everybody with social media is a sinner, but I just think we need to be really, really careful because this stuff, like you were talking about, it's the ways of the world. It's not necessarily like, man, if you're a Christian, you can't have X, Y, and Z, you can't watch TV, but it is just what's culturally normal. And what's normal doesn't mean it's God's best for us. And we've talked about that a ton, but we really, I think now more than ever, with the generations coming, need to be mindful of that because they need led in how to find freedom from the captivity the enemy has brought them into through the technology that is embedded in the lifestyles that they live. And if we can't find freedom from those things, we can't lead them to find it either. And so I think that's going to be a really pivotal thing in years to come.
And I think the irony, you touched on it a little bit, is that like the reality, the world that God has created is interesting enough. Really.
Yeah.
Like go out and
beautiful.
Go out and talk to people and connect with people and get involved in people's lives and see how fascinating that is.
I disagree. I think it's just more fulfilling. That's the battle.
What?
I don't think like you could say it's more interesting. But if that were the case, more people would do it. I think it's more fulfilling. I think it's against the grain.
Yeah. But it's but that's one example, right? Yeah. But also like nature, you know, serving, right? Just detaching and disconnecting from that to just step out into the world, you know, to live life. I think, you're right. It's more fulfilling, more rewarding, more enriching, more challenging, right? Because it's easy to stay inside.
It's not stimulating.
Right.
That's the thing.
John Mayer's song, The Great Indoors.
Yeah, it doesn't give you the dopamine hit. Yeah. And one of the best sermons I've heard in my life was by one of the associate spiritual directors at Liberty. At one of our campus Bible studies, it was killer, and he talked about feedback loops. And he was like, the reason
the
reason why it is so difficult for you to consistently spend time with the Lord is because it's not a satisfying feedback loop. Like you scroll and it's designed to addict you to it. It is a variable reward system. There is psychology that goes into it. It looks like a lottery machine for a reason. Sometimes you pull it down, nothing happens. Sometimes you pull it down and look at all these new posts and there's likes and stuff. Like it wires your brain to look for the constant drip, right? But when you spend time reading the Bible, like sometimes you will have these breakthrough miraculous moments where the Lord will speak clearly to you. Other times you will have read it and be like, okay, I know that that's what God calls me to do. I spent time with him this morning and I'm going to try to carry that with me throughout the rest of my day. But it takes significant time for the input to get an output. And so this instant gratification, input, output, that is what we live in. But the joy that we get from spending time going on a hike, it's like, you put the input in and it takes a long time
You're
for you
trading
to get the joy out.
You're trading pleasure for joy.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is
doing.
exactly
Yeah, I
it.
like that.
You're trading pleasure for joy. And God created us for joy. Pleasure is like something that it's a lag measure. It is not a lead measure. It's something that comes alongside whenever you live the life that God calls you to live. And it's not always guaranteed. And that's okay. Because when you only live a life full of pleasure, you wind up like Solomon. You know? Should be seeking joy. And I think that's a really good thing, Ced. That was good.
That's great. Well, to close out that question, I think we should all do the Forrest Frank dance.
Dude, how many kids this week I've seen doing that dance? The song comes on and they just start putting their hands in.
It's so good. Forrest, come on the podcast. Could you imagine?
This is so funny, but there's a movie that I want to recommend that's on this topic.
Is it Lars in the real world?
I don't know. I don't remember it.
Lars in the real world.
I'll do a post about it on our Instagram. When I look at it's a Japanese movie about this concept of like living life.
I don't watch anime, dude.
In that way. But
Naruto.
Naruto. Yeah.
All right.
The last.
I'm glad I went last because I definitely had a similar question to Ceddie, one of them. But so I'm gonna pivot to this other question, and it's something also that we've discussed recently. But we have on this podcast talked a lot about the importance of Christian community, being a part of a Christian community, having a community. We've talked a lot about it. But what I want to ask you guys is, what is the ideal Christian community actually supposed to look like? And to give you some context, I'm going to read from Acts. I'm teaching on this tomorrow. But you'll know it's Acts 2:42.
I was about to say.
Right?
And they held everything in common. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, into the prayers,
even-
into the breaking of bread.
Dude, put that Bible away. We got the human
Please bless
Bible
us.
here.
Bless us. Bless us.
So so this is Acts right after Pentecost. Obviously Jesus had ascended, and now they've received the Holy Spirit, and the apostles have set out on this journey to establish Christ's church. And this is what they're building. Verse 42, and they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers. And awe came upon every soul. And many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. And all who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their number day by day those who were being saved. For me, that is a template and like a model for what the ideal Christian community is, how it's supposed to look, how it's supposed to function, and then the fruit, that comes from God's blessing in doing what it describes. And there's some things that like really leap out from that passage, things that I feel come to a head with our culture today, the church today, and the way that most of us have learned to live within Christian community that doesn't in large part resemble that. So what's your take like on that passage? These are some of my questions, like, is that achievable today? Is that even what we should be aiming for? Is it possible today? And if so, what do you think that looks like? What does that mean for each of us? And even like, how interdependent are we supposed to be on each other? Like, does my personal faith and like walk with the Lord and dedicating times to isolation and like maybe Sabbath is just me, or unplugging from my phone and disconnecting, does that remove me from the community that I'm supposed to be immersed in? Like, these are like some of my thoughts, but what do you think that actual Christian community is supposed to look like?
There's part of me that will just have an understanding of that is what happened in the early church, not a directive, where you can say it's a template, but I just feel like the whole Bible doesn't attest to that being the template. I mean, you look at the Old Testament and you look at how the Israelites lived, and just how everybody lived, like in the way that, looking at Proverbs and stuff like that. And you'd think that the wisdom literature would speak to something a little more like that. And so, sorry if this is a little abstract. In my brain, it kind of makes sense, but it might not come out right. So
you're good so far. I'm
like,
following.
Yeah, that seems to be this is what happened. This isn't like, this is now what the church is going to be.
And you're saying you don't think it's a prescriptive thing?
Yeah, because I mean, look at, they had signs and wonders all the time, right? And you could argue that all of that was necessary for that early church to jump off, right? And then go from there. I think we need to be closer to that than we are now. I think interdependent is an interesting word to use for that. We definitely need to be the body, and we definitely need to be involved in each other's lives more than we are now. But in terms of that being the template, there's just nothing in me that can say that would be the case. So,
but it doesn't. I don't get it doesn't appear to me that the apostles said, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to, teach this, and we're going to meet, like, it seems like this flowed naturally.
This is a fruit of a Christian life,
into
their
their
Christian
being.
life,
Like,
yeah.
this is how we. Also, there was persecution. There was a lot of factors going into it. To like why perhaps they were so close-knit in the context with which they were in. Also, I have heard teachings in which, like, in Jesus' time, the way that the Jewish families lived were almost like in these little compounds with like this open area in the middle, but like different families still like living together within that compound, and so they were like meeting in each other's homes. There were fewer of them in number, so there was persecution. They just received the Holy Spirit. So there's reasons for it, but I think for me, it's like seeing the fruit of it, and also coupling that with, the idea that we worship a triune God who lives in community, who designed us for community. It seems to me that is the model, what you see there in Acts. So, I mean, in a way, the fact that it's establishing the church is prescriptive in and of itself. Like that.
So you think we should be doing like miracles and following apostles?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah?
Oh,
Yeah,
I don't think there's apostles.
I don't think. Sorry.
Yeah, not
I don't think we should
apostles.
be. No. But I do think that we should. I don't think we should be following. Yeah, modern day apostles don't exist. No.
Okay.
But what I do think, the Bible.
The Bible doesn't say there's no more apostles.
Yeah, man.
No, it doesn't.
No, it's like,
dude, show me receipts. Show me receipts.
Well, one of the marks of the apostles is that they were ordained by Jesus himself.
Like, okay, yeah. But why? Wait, does it say that?
In person.
Does it say that?
I mean, that is one of the marks of the people that are in the Bible called apostles.
Yeah.
Including
Look,
Paul.
I'm not saying one way or another. All I'm saying is, like, you can't be. I don't think you can be certain of that. I don't think you have a biblical basis to say that 100%.
But the apostles in the scriptures received a direct commission from Jesus himself. And in addition to that,
like Jesus said, you are going to be the only apostles.
Well, no, but the office was later like given as a descriptor for the role that they played in the story of God. Because you and I didn't walk with the physical Christ, and you and I weren't stopped on the road to Damascus by him and then given the title from Christ as like the one who's supposed to go to the Gentiles, like the apostle to the Gentiles. And so like that term is like descriptive of them. So I mean, of course we're like followers of Jesus. But I do think that, we like in other parts of the world, that is how the church functions. It is. That's how communities of God are set up. And so like if you look at we're talking about the Old Testament, like the Israelites were set up that way. God gave them very clear instructions to function as an interdependent society upon one another, and that they were supposed to be incredibly just and right in the way that they even did deals with one another, in the way that they gave land to and from one another, in how much they should harvest and how much they should leave for foreigners or those who were hungry or those who were incapable of harvesting, to give to them, and then to provide for the priests who were responsible for worship. Like everyone was dependent upon one another. And then if there were debts that were incurred through hardship and brokenness that happened through the years, like there were Sabbath years,
and
there were
the whole
year of Jubilee where debts were
purpose
forgiven and land was given back to families. And like the entire society was set up to be dependent on God, and then his provision for the community to be sufficient for them to function and flourish in the way that he designed them to on the earth.
And for them to be set apart.
Yes.
For the world to see.
And a nation, of priests, a royal priesthood. Like God wanted all of Israel to be a royal priesthood, set apart for his purposes as a testament to the nations about what it's like to be in relationship with God. And yet they fell short, therefore Christ, right? All the suffering that leads to him and him beginning, but that's what's so beautiful, because dude, there's a reason there's 12 apostles, because there were 12 tribes, and it's representing God. It's representing him again, starting fresh with this family that's going to begin anew. This is how he wants to move and do things moving forward. So it's not to say like we need to like organize our church structure exclusively around having ministries that are like those things that are laid out in Acts chapter 2.
Right.
We do need to execute as best we can, living out the commissions Jesus does give us, because there's certainly obscurity in the text. Mm-hmm. Like it doesn't give you specific details about how much for everything, like how often, how much time did they spend in doing this thing and that thing, and how much of the service was prayer, and how much of the service was worship, and how much. It doesn't do that. But what I will say though is that I think that we need to be mindful of the fact that that is God's heart for us, and that in other places where lives are less easy, people are more willing to leave behind what they once knew and see still the Holy Spirit move in ways that there is miraculous things done, physical healing, and like legitimate things that are happening in the kingdom of God in other parts of the world. And so that's important. And the story of the Bible doesn't end in Acts chapter 2. We have all of the letters of Paul for a reason, because the church did do that, and then they tried to grow it and do it in other parts of the world, and there began to be all of the brokenness of grafting other people into the family of God, and the culture coming in and watering things down, and all of these things happening. And so, like, Paul writes all these letters to help bring them back to what Christ was calling them to. But each of those churches was clearly functioning differently, right? In light of their culture and like where they were doing things different. So I don't think we all need to have one way we do everything, but I do think we need to have a more biblical mindset with how we structure the church. Like, I think that we should be more intentional to structure our churches and how the Bible lays out for us.
And I should clarify, because honestly, when posing the question, like, my emphasis for me personally wasn't on the signs and wonders. Like, for me, that's an effect of how they were. I mean, it's there. So but I'm referring more to, like, they devoted themselves to teaching and fellowship, to breaking of bread and prayers. All who believed were together, had all things in common, selling their possessions day by day, attending the temple together, breaking bread in their homes. You know, it's this idea of, like, this very tight-knit unity, right? Where there was this, where, you know, it wasn't like, you know, you've brought up the example in the past of, like, me at a coffee shop with my Bible by myself. That was not a thing in that description, right? It was like,
well, Jesus went away to pray to his Father.
He did, but he means like the
modern. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to.
I know. Yes, but he's
telling people to go into your closet and pray to your Father in secret.
But he means exclusively, like, your faith is my faith is between me and God.
No, I get what you're saying, but yeah. Okay, so modern day, like, what do you suppose we do?
I think we need to seek to do life together more. Open our doors, not just be, you know, as even we, you know, it's challenging for me, right? Because, like, my life, we have multiple young children who we are raising and bringing up, but at times I just feel the Lord in my faith pushing me towards, how do you keep the focus on your family, but also be open to the community that I've called you to live in, and invite people into that? Or, you know, not be so attached to your routine and your structure, you know, sometimes maybe throw that out the window to, you know, go and do something, you know, together with people more often. I just think we're so trapped in our schedules, in our lives, in our routines, in our order a certain way, which more often than not is more fixed around a high degree of isolation, at least higher than what seems to be modeled there for the church. So I just think that we need to seek out more opportunities, more ways, because I think the benefits of it are even more than what's listed there, right? Like, iron sharpens iron. I believe that I am stronger when there's more good, faithful, God-fearing Christians around me that know me, that are exposed to me, you know? So I just think that, yeah, it's something that we need to cultivate more than and push back on society and on the ways in which we have become accustomed to doing things now.
I agree.
Yeah. I think by and large we are radically individualistic in our lifestyle, and we need to be more willing to,
like,
yes.
in some, well, no. Like, what I'm trying to get at is, like, something you touched on is our schedules. So what I'm thinking about right now is parents right now and their kids' sports schedules. Like, you're out and about doing, like, tons of stuff, and you're busy all the time. And so you're not really isolated. You're, like, out, but you still are sort of, people in general are more isolated for sure. So yeah, I agree. I mean, this goes back to the entertainment thing. Like, opening up your schedule for people, you will be more fulfilled. This is just a guarantee. You will be more fulfilled in your life if you throw away entertainment and then you spend time in your community. It's just a fact, you know? And so I think in that vein, we definitely need to be more like that and something to strive towards.
Yeah, absolutely. So my question was that we keep talking about this idea. Like, what would that look like in your life? What do you think?
Honestly,
like day to day or week to week, what do you think you could do to craft more of this into your life?
I don't know, because I work for a church and my life's a lot different than other people where I'm like forced to be at church a lot. And I spend time with my community, at least a lot more than other people, you know? And so...
But all right, that is true and valid, right? But you've also stated that because of your position in the church, oftentimes there's this pressure to not be genuine. Right? Because you are looked at as this model, right? And so that's being in community, but is it really, being
Let me just say,
known in community?
Let's go back to the question. I think you are correct to where people do need to open up more. Do I do it? Do I do it? Probably not as well as I should. Do I think I should?
You do.
I mean, no, but that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
That is more of an ideal than where we're at now. Is it the ideal for our time that we are? I mean, we would look like a cult if we did that.
But the Lord was adding to their number. They were held in high esteem by the people around them.
I'm not saying
because of their generosity and stuff.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying in our modern context, I'm telling you, that's what people would think. I'm not saying.
But would it be? That's what I was going to say. But would that be a bad thing?
No, I mean, I'm just telling you some facts. Also, another fact.
Like Ned Flanders in The Simpsons. Basically.
Just so you know, the apostles prayed and cast lots to add another apostle.
They did. Yeah, they did.
So,
I don't think that in the context
Boom roasted.
But they
that's
did.
all I gotta say.
But the apostles did it, so that's still a caveat.
So those apostles can keep adding to the apostles.
No, but it's inside.
And then those apostles
one dude killed himself.
But it's inside the canonized scripture that those are identified, and so
is that what Jesus said?
I think it's important. It's important to keep that in mind, because if we just walk around and people are claiming to be apostles,
I agree.
Then this is the ultra anointed spiritual leader thing, and
I agree.
And I think it's like one of the most disgusting lies the church has to tell right now is that there's more anointed people than others, and I can't stand it, because there's no junior Holy Spirit and there's no varsity Holy Spirit, and like the term apostle is just a dangerous thing to throw around.
I'm just trying to not put your thoughts.
I have a
box.
definition.
Okay?
I have an official definition right here. Apostle
from what
means the Bible.
Wait, no. Hold on. What is that?
The glossary to
the glossary.
Okay,
really, the glossary.
So you think just
That's
one
what
author just look one who is sent and refers to one who is an official representative of another. In the New Testament, refers specifically to those whom Jesus chose to represent him.
Like Matthias there?
He spoke to
They prayed and cast lots.
Through the apostles.
So what bent is that Bible?
What do you mean, what bent?
It's an ESV.
Dude, every Bible has a bent.
It's from Crossway. Crossway published it.
Every Bible has a bent? No, it does not. Dude, that's a different
hot take, baby.
If you want to talk about differences
Bible.
in translations and functional and like formal translations and literary analysis.
No, I'm talking about the notes.
Listen.
Okay. I was like the word. Like,
no, not the Bible itself.
well, that's why I was
Who
confused.
Do you think I am?
You said every Bible has a bent, Ceddie. I'm just trying to
everybody has a thing, you know.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway,
Juan, I think what you were hitting on is good. I do think that it would not be bad for the people in the world to look at us and see something different. I think that's what it looks like for the church to thrive. And like what took the Roman Empire down is that the early church was living so generously, so cultishly, that they didn't know how to deal with them. They were welcoming in those who had nothing to contribute to society, the sick, the lame, the widowed, the orphan. They were providing for them. They were inviting them to their feasts. They were like going out and serving the community. They were living so generously that they were ruining the economy. Like that's what it looks like to live intensely for the kingdom of God. And I think we could use a little bit more of that now, because there's a reason that Peter describes, like when he's writing, he describes us as exiles. Like he's trying to draw attention to the fact that this is not our home and we can't live like it is. Now, it doesn't mean we shouldn't seek the good of the nation. Like that's what he tells us to do. But we should, in addition to that, recognize that like the United States isn't our home and this culture isn't our primary one. It should be the culture of Christ and the kingdom of God. And so I think we need to be really, really intentional about that. In addition, I think part of what this looks like in community is learning how to live naked and unashamed. Because that is what...
That is a cult.
That is what... Okay, but that is what...
Living on a compound, being naked and unashamed. Jerry, you've lost me.
Okay, here's... In Genesis, that is how God designed us to be. He designed us to have every part of our lives open to one another. And I am thoroughly convinced that some of the deepest wounds happen behind closed doors. And when we don't invite people into an area of our lives, we open ourselves up to be deceived by the enemy and go down a very dark path very quickly. We need to be willing to invite accountability into our lives, and I mean in every aspect. And that's what I think biblical community can and should look like. It means talking to one another about your financial decisions. I think it means talking to one another about your marital problems, about your parenting choices, about every aspect of the life that you are trying to lead, because you're surrendering it to the Lord and to the discernment of the body of Christ, who the Holy Spirit is in. That is God's heart. Like that's what he wants for us, you know? And so when we just like live our own lives and we're like, yeah, my wife and I are moving here and this is what we're going to do for my career and we're going to do this. It's like, did you pray about that? Did you talk to anyone about the decisions that you're trying to make? Is that God's heart for you? Have you asked him? You know, like we don't ask those questions enough, you know? And I think we need to be a part of communities where that is something we talk about, you know? And like Gianna and I were thinking about trying to buy a home. We have to shift out of our townhouse. We're like month to month right now. We're living on a month-to-month lease because they're going to renovate these homes and they're going to sell them. And so we like have been trying to figure out what are we going to do. And I sat down and I was talking with like my mentor and I was like, here's how much we have saved and here's how much it would bind us if we bought a house at this price and this price and this price. And like, what are your thoughts? You know, like and like we talked to multiple people and we were like, here's our savings and here's how much these homes are and here's how much we would have and well, here's what our monthly, but like that kind of stuff where usually we have shame talking about some of these things, but shame is an evil against community. That's why whenever in the fall, it talks about them living naked and unashamed. That was how God wanted us to be before the fall. And so the thing that shatters intimacy with God and one another is shame. And the more that we can do everything to get that out of the way and invite the Lord in and be open with one another in every aspect of our lives, the more we'll experience healing and the power of God in our lives, in our relationships, and for the sake of Christ.
And what if also part of the reason why we're so divided is because I read my Bible and I jump to a conclusion about what it says, then I go on YouTube and I listen to my favorite preacher affirm what I believe, and then I go, yep, that's right. And you don't agree with me, so, you know, I disagree with you. Instead of in a group being like, let's read the Bible together. Yeah. What does this say? Mm-hmm. What's your experience? What is God speaking to, you know, here about this? What's this, right? Instead of learning and growing together. So, you know, that could speak towards that issue right there where we see so much division today and so many things fostering that. But I think, like, again, what I would love, as hard as it would be for me in this season of life, right? Like, for example, we have a marriage group where we meet once every 2 weeks. Like, I would love to attempt for a period of time following something closer to this model where it's like, we're going to meet twice a week. One day for reading scripture, one day for praying for each other. Maybe every other Sunday we have meals together after church. We're going to have this pool that we contribute to. And then as a group, however often, we're going to decide what to do with that money, how to bless people. Every other month, we're going to go somewhere and serve together. Like things like that, where we are now structuring our life around our community, not fitting community into the structure of our lives.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good.
So, and I think that if as Christians we took that seriously and we started to do that, look at the generosity that would come out of that. Look at the growth. Someone in our church the other day at the workshop that we did brought up how most Christians today are biblically illiterate. If we were in a group together, we could be iron sharpening iron, helping each other to mature in our faith, to grow out of baby food and milk into steak and potatoes like Paul describes.
Come on, baby.
We could
filet mignon.
Sounds like a better meal to me.
We could then share it. Actually, the times that I've been frustrated by a child dedication or a baptism in front of the congregation, affirming that they're going to be a part of this child's journey, where it's like, I don't even know your name. What if you actually did that in a real community that meant
Hold on.
That was like,
guys. But here's the thing. So say we did that. Say we just were that great with our group and stuff like that, but then we were just our own community, but people wanted to add to our community, kind of like how our church that we work at now started. And you grow, and you grow, and you grow, and you try to make systems to try to keep people connected. There's a tithe, there's a pool that goes into like a bank account that they try to decide through elders where that money should go. But you can't hold on to that structure. And then they're like, we need small groups. They know that. We need small groups. That's what it's for, to do that. And they're hoping that people do that. But can they keep track of everybody? So it's like the numbers will add, but then we need systems in place, and we need elders council and all this stuff. And we're acting like people haven't tried that.
Okay.
And if it grows, you need to have systems, but people are broken, and you're dealing with broken people. And so we can't just look at every big church and be like, you're doing it wrong because community is not good enough. But why is it that church's fault?
All right, that's a good point. So then would you say then, rather than, what I've been describing is simply just each of us taking more personal accountability for our community?
Everybody does. That's the thing. And maybe you can try to do more from the pulpit, but if you ask the people in the pulpit, they're like, we are trying,
Yeah. And what would you say though? Then would you say that where the church is currently now in the West, where we have experienced it, is operating as close to as God's design as it could be?
No, but I don't think we're going to get there unless we have a big move of God.
And
we can try to follow this as much as we
does
want.
A big move of God come exclusively from Him changing all of the hearts, or also from obedience from His followers?
Yes, and then yes.
Exactly. I totally agree. But He blesses the obedience of His children, and so with size comes a lack of intimacy. That's just as it grows.
So you're saying there should be smaller churches.
I'm not saying there should be smaller churches. I'm saying that there should be churches where and I'm not saying, we need to be more small groups. There's a million small groups, but we need to prioritize. Like Juan was saying, it needs to be community leading to the decisions we make in our lives, not our busy, overscheduled lives leading to how we choose to be a part of the community. And higher expectations and more accountability, I think, would make a significant difference in the experience of people's walk with Jesus each and every day. Because I don't think they need to abandon the church and everybody starts a little baby house church, but people should be a part of a church family that is a group of people together, and they don't need to leave or abandon the churches that they're in. But unless that happens, dude, then we do feel like wandering generalities. We feel like you're just walking in. You're like a guy who I respect a lot described these folks, you guys heard it, as jellyfish who like they're just in the water and they float into church and they float out of church and they hear an inspirational sermon and they try harder, and that doesn't work. It's not sufficient to change the life of a human being. That's proven. Christ came and showed us that. And so like it is necessary, and God tied himself to this permanently when he said our ultimate goal, the greatest commandment, is to love God with all of our heart and soul and mind and love our neighbor as ourself. And if we're like trying to love him and one another with all that we are, I think it has to shape the decisions that we make instead of the opposite, the decisions that we make and all the things we want shaping, like, oh, well, I'll dip my toe in community, then maybe I'll do a 10-week study and then I'm good. Like it's not that that's not beneficial. That is beneficial, but it will only get you so far.
The only thing I can point to is maybe not strong enough accountability from churches in general, where we're so afraid to offend that we don't hold people to the high expectations, high standards that we have.
Yes.
Not to guilt, not to shame, but like, hey, you're not living the way you're supposed to, brother. Like, are you opening up your home to people?
Yeah, like discipline and honest conversations. Dude,
so
you're totally right.
I'd say that's the only thing that I find issue with structure, because with that comes all the stuff that you're talking about, in my opinion. So I just don't want us to be like, the structure now is so bad and it's not working. Well, maybe you're right, but also like everybody's that's become a big church has tried something like that, and it just keeps growing.
No, I appreciate your perspective. I think it's important, and I don't think my point of view maybe years ago, but today certainly wasn't like, our church thinks let's do it better or anything like that, because like I love our church and it's blessed me and my family immensely. Yeah. Especially the more that I've plugged into community there and like met more people and like established more relationships. It's blessed me even more. But I do think within that current structure, especially with bigger churches, there are a lot of people that kind of just kind of have the expectation that the model is there, or that, that just by attending, they're part of a community. And it's like, no, you can still attend and be anonymous. Many people are, like maybe to understand the strength and the power of community, how God works within that. And then, like Jeremiah, like we were affirming, like seeking to escape maybe, the current of isolation, and saying like ensuring that my life day to day is more aligned with accountability and people that I'm actually sharing my life with on Sundays, and then day to day throughout the week as well, whatever that looks like, in your context.
And I don't think that if you are a big church, it has to be like there's no community and no intimacy possible. I don't think that's the case. I think that there are ways to really do this with excellence and do it really well, and like have a church that's tight knit and close. But it can't be. You can't know 5,000 people. God didn't make us that way. Like we have limits relationally. We have like the capacity to only like really, really be like close friends with a pretty small.
So does the pastor.
A pretty small number of people, and so like. We got to recognize those limits and work to have structures that operate around the limits God has given us, instead of trying to like, we can't, just like you were saying, the pastor has limits. They can't be best friends with everyone in the congregation. They can like know and be close to some people and be friendly and loving for all those that are close. But like, it's not possible to be close with every single person there. But I think we can really help by setting examples for what it can look like to have deep community, more like you were talking about from Acts chapter 2, by following the biblical precedent and seeing the way that God blessed that obedience to his commandments.
I agree. Let's do it, boys.
Dope.
Sick.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, this has been great.
It's a good time.
Yeah.
Good question.
Always a pleasure. Juan, thanks for being here, bringing it. Ceddie, thanks for being here.
Hey, Juan. Yeah, thanks for showing up, man.
Juan, thanks for showing up and being
here. I knew
here.
it took a lot.
Ceddie, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Rocking it.
I want to remind everybody that don't subscribe.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't follow.
It's dangerous. The things we're talking about here, those things can get you in trouble.
You can't handle the truth.
Yeah. Your mom don't want to know about this. Your pastor. Don't tell him you watched this. Just the underground.
Yeah, right.
Underground stuff.
That'll help
you
your
better
community.
not watch it. If I find out you watched, you liked, you subscribed, you better watch out.
Boys, they're upside down.
Yeah. Boys, it's been a pleasure as always. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
No, we won't.